All right, Mr. President, I know a lot has been talked about CHOGM, but please allow me to divert your attention to matters of regional diplomacy, and specifically Rwanda and DRC. Now, as tensions rose between M23 and the Congolese army, we saw a lot of hostility. We saw hate speech, we also saw killings aimed at Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese. But also recently, as the president of DRC was giving a speech for independence, he specifically said that no doubt Rwanda was backing a rebellion on their territory. How would you respond to him? And secondly, what do you think can be done about this crisis?
Everything or most of these things have a history. So it's not just like it happened anyhow. So the history of either Kinyarwanda speaking Congolese or these crises that happen on and off over the years between Congo and Rwanda have a history. And we have been in these kinds of situations, we have had to say things that we think need to be addressed, but they were never addressed properly, and that's how these matters keep recurring. Let me give an example. The so-called M23. There was a crisis in 2012, I think. And this crisis drew in all kinds of countries and regions, and including international institutions and like the UN and big countries, powers that decide on many things. And they made one mistake, which we pointed out at that time, that such matters are not resolved by force of arms. They don't require military solutions. They require more political solutions. They ignored what we were telling them. They just, fought the so-called M23 without even understanding why it was born and how it came to be. Defeated it, and the remnants fled to two countries mainly. One group went to Uganda, another group came to Rwanda. And these groups, some of them are still in Rwanda, others in Uganda. But we kept reminding them that there was a political solution that they needed to apply, which they didn't. Maybe that since they had been defeated militarily, there was need to address those matters, political. And that is, these, as you called them, Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese, it means they speak Kinyarwanda, but they are Congolese citizens. How they became citizens of Congo cannot be blamed on Congo or cannot be blamed on Rwanda. We didn't decide that these people go to Congo to be their citizens. And maybe the Congolese didn't decide that. But that is the fact of the matter. So how do you, at any one point, just decide that you are now going to declare people no longer citizens of their countries? Where do you start from? And how can you actually effect that? Now, what happens, the same people will always find ways of pushing back, of fighting back, of making sure that they have to belong somewhere. Now, saying that they belong to Rwanda is a big mistake because, no, all the years they have been in Congo, they know Congo as their own country. And of course, there is the mix of drawing of borders and so on in the early times by during colonial times. So if you want to push back these people and throw them out of the country they belong to, then you better throw them out with the land they have been occupying, which happened to be on one side or the other by just arbitrary lines that were drawn during colonial times. But that's, maybe I shouldn't even have said that, because some people will distort it and complicate it and say different things, but that's not what I meant. I'm just applying logic to this whole matter. So these people are forgotten. By the way, we have refugees here from Congo. They've been staying here for now close to 2 decades. And most of them, these Kinyarwanda speaking Congolese. They left their homes, their ancestral homes in the other side of Congo. We've been asking different governments in Congo that these people need to be taken back to their countries, to their country and to their places where they belong. Or that government of DRC, whichever government it was, needed to find a way of speaking to these people and reintegrating them back in the society of Congo. That did not happen until recently. In fact, when President Tshisekedi became president, right from the outset, these matters were discussed with him directly or with his officials. In fact, on the side of M23, the officials of DRC came here several times talking to these people directly, because when they were thrown out of Congo and came here, we disarmed them and gave back to Congo these arms they were using to fight their country. But what remained was the repatriation of these people back to Congo, which never happened. And even under President Tshisekedi, these officials came here, met them several times, and promised them they were actually going to address that problem. And with our assistance, because they would talk to them with our people trying to assist and, to find ways of taking them back. They came here several times, they talked to them, they would go back, with the promises made to them, which were never fulfilled. They come back another time, then another time, then another time, several times. So until recently, when this fighting was about to happen, we were talking to DRC again and actually alerting them to the information we had that this trouble was again building up and they needed to do something, which they never did. So I'm not, on one hand, I'm surprised, and on the other, I'm not surprised, because for that history that has been talked about so many times, you wouldn't expect people to be confused about it, because the facts are clear. On the other, I'm not surprised, because this has come to be the thing to expect that has happened over these last 20 years. Just back and forth, and completely using wrong arguments. But there are people in the world who listen to such wrong arguments and based on them to even make wrong decisions. In fact, when they were defeated, and then there was a force that was created, Force Intervention Brigade, then there was MONUSCO under the UN, and all these were supposed to make sure that, first of all, there is peace, there is a ceasefire, but that ceasefire facilitating political solutions. One, there has been a process, for example, you may know, of FDLR, these remnants of Interahamwe and genociders. They have different group names. There's FDLR, there's RwandaTV, there's all kinds of stuff. So there has been a process of repatriation. In fact, a number of them have been brought back, even through the hands of the UN, and reintegrated back in society. So it has been going on for a long time. Many of them, probably more came than those who remained, for a fact. The ones who remained were the core group that, for them, they think it is a fight and they must fight, and for them they are fighting even for a wrong cause, because they are talking about the old story of Rwanda. It's like that was underlying the genocide itself. So they want a country for one group of people and not for the other. And for us, we've been saying, no, all groups belong here. Those ones that, you know, as we found it, as God created our country, and people happen to be here, they are one and the same, and they need to be together. But for the hardcore, they think of different things. So now, recently, these FDLR are fighting alongside FARDC, those are the forces of Congo, against the M23. And then to make it worse, the UN got into the mix. They were purportedly supporting FARDC, meaning government forces, but they knew very well that these government forces of DRC are fighting together with the FDLR against M23. So you have one M23 on one side, and then you have MONUSC, government forces of Congo, and FDLR. FDLR, which should have been fought and eliminated from that situation, together with repatriating them, those who wanted to come back home, which we have done. So that's where we are. And that's why I cannot understand why the president of Congo would, in his statement to the press, say such a things as he said, because he should very well know the facts as they are, because we have even discussed these matters for a long time, well before, since he came to power and well before this crisis. So this crisis, therefore, will require one thing. There are a number of things that have happened which I haven't mentioned, but I mentioned them in the conclusion of my point. One, Congo has its own things to deal with, and we have our own things to deal with as independent sovereign countries. Without having to interfere with each other, we just have to work together where we choose to work together. And it is not acceptable, it's not going to ever be, that FDLR, these genocidal forces, or remnants of them, will be armed to attack Rwanda. And if you remember, in 2019, there was an attack that came from Congo, 2019 in November, I think, where groups infiltrated through the Virunga Mountains and attacked Kinigi, and our forces intervened, defeated them, and removed them. So, and second, we have had sharing from DRC territory into Rwanda, which damaged, killed people, damaged property, and several times. Now, so we are saying all along we need peace, and we need peace for both of us. There needs to be peace in Rwanda, there needs to be peace in DRC. Therefore, we should give each other peace. So it's not acceptable that FDLR ever would be supported to cross into our territory or supported to share into our territory and kill our citizens. We have not done that to Congo. Second, there is a need to politically address this problem of Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese, including those members of so-called M23. But that is the problem of Congo to address. It's not mine.
If you could